Hi everyone. So through this formative video, we are going to get through the Cain and Abel story and moving on to the pre-story that will get us to Noah's Ark. So first of all, one thing that we should look at and just make sure we understand, because we haven't looked at this all, if we ask the question, what does early prayer look like? And this was just brought up in one of the readings that I find is fascinating. And we look at what both Cain and then Hevel are actually doing, is that they are offering something to God. So the very first idea of what prayer is about isn't something that is verbal, but is actually something that is a giving of self. And some of the just some of the comments that I heard about this idea were that only in our society today do we have this sense of prayer equals something verbal and a giving of self. Actually, we've gone to the kind of the realm of completely verbal, which asks the question, what have we given up by not saying that we need to offer something as well? That prayer can't just be verbal, but has to be actually something that is a giving of some sort. And by the way, at the very end of this chapter, so this is all obviously in the beginning of chapter 4, and the very end of the chapter, the last words we hear are, and to Seth in turn. So Adam has another child, and his name is Seth. And Seth, and the children of kind of that come next are going to all come from Seth's line and not from Cain's line. So, and Seth in turn was born, and a son was born. And his name was Enosh, and it was then that God began to be invoked by name. So only at the time of Seth, right, not beforehand, we had an idea of someone actually talking to God with God's name. Until that point, the way you kind of approach God was with gifts. So I find that's kind of interesting. I do want to bring up, even though Gail didn't want to mention it, we need to know something in this course that we're so lucky that Gail is not only a perceptive reader of Torah in her own right, and actually she's not going to tell you this, but she won a competition in Israel about kind of knowing the stuff in the Talmud, Chidun, I think Chidun Tanakh. Hopefully Gail will tell us about that. I'm sure she's very embarrassed listening to this right now. But her father is a great Torah scholar as well. And if you come to Beth Jacob Synagogue, you'll hear him kind of talk about each chelek, each portion of our Torah reading for the week, and it's a real pleasure, so much so that I'm willing to give extra credit to anyone who comes and listens to him and kind of provides me with some feedback of what they heard. So that's an easy extra credit, just coming on Shabbat morning to Beth Jacob and listening to Gal's father explain the different parts of any of the parshiot. So that's an open invitation, everyone. So one of the things that she mentioned to me that when she was talking to him about this was that when we see this idea of field, right, what we should really be saying to ourselves is, why is Cain so angry? Hevel brings his sheep into the field, and what do? They eat all of the stuff of the field, so much so that all Cain has to offer Hashem is this one piece of little fruit, because he doesn't have any left, because all of the sheep of Hevel ate all of the stuff of the field. And that's how kind of this broges, or this anger, really happened. What a cool explanation, right? And just kind of looking at kind of saying, well, just using the Torah itself, it's like, oh, they're in the field, this guy has sheep, this guy has stuff, right? Sheep love to just eat whatever's around them, right? So I think it's really cool. Okay, so as our very first thing, I said that this is a phrase, Hashomer Achi Anochi, am I my brother's keeper? Which, what does that even mean, by the way? And it's a phrase that I think we should know. So in your voice audio this week, I'd like you to respond to me by giving me 5. Give me 5 Hashomer Achi Anochis, and you can change the intonation of that every time, right? Because sometimes it might be just a question, Hashomer Achi Anochi, and sometimes it might be a Hashomer Achi Anochi, right? Because that Ha is like, am I really my brother? Hashomer Achi Anochi? Right? So you can kind of get creative with that, but I need 5 Hashomer Achi Anochis, so you'll be able to kind of have that phrase in your mind whenever I ask you, like, oh, did you hear that Eric's car broke down? And you can say back to me, like, if you have no idea, right, that Eric's a member of our class, or if you have no idea that his car broke down, or like, or you know what, or you have other things to worry about. You can just say, Hashomer Achi Anochi. I'm not worried about Eric. I've got my own stuff here to worry about. And okay, so let's move on. So here is the response that God says, right? Me asita. What did you do? Call demei achicha tzoakim elai min ha'adama. What did you do? Call the voice of the bloods of your brother are crying out to me from the ground. Rashi, of course, is going to find a major problem with this pasuk. What is that problem? Do you see it? You can see it. It's in English as well. You might think it's a typo, but it's not. Okay, what is that problem? Okay, so there's the problem right there. Demei achicha, right? What does that mean? Plural for bloods. Like, what could that actually mean, right? It should be the voice. It should be called dam achicha, the voice or the sound of the blood of your brother is calling from is crying out from the ground. So what do you think? Why is it then written? Oh, hey, yeah, good. So here is Rashi's question, which I hope you figured out on your own. Why does the Torah say bloods of your brother instead of blood of your brothers? Do you have an answer? Write that in write that answer to me now. And of course, Rashi is kind of saying, like, this is weird grammar, right? Okay, right, because it should say dam, not demei, not plural, not bloods, but the blood of your brothers. And a beautiful answer is given here by Rashi. He says, of course it's bloods, it's plural, because it's not just the blood of a present child, of the present human being, but all of the potential people that will come from Hevel in the future, you've actually just killed as well. You haven't just killed one person, you've killed kind of the line of Hevel in the future and all those potential people that had come. And by the way, there's a beautiful Mishnah, right? So what is Mishnah? Mishnah is kind of this compendium of oral laws that are kind of a supplement to the Torah, also given at Mount Sinai. And it talks about this specific idea because it says this idea was used to scare witnesses about how serious a trial with the death penalty was and how important it was that witnesses not lie. They said, if you make a mistake, you don't just make it for you, you make it for all the people that would have been born after you but never will be born. And they bring up in the mission itself, it brings up this piece of Torah, which is really very provocative, right? Because it's like these two documents are coming from Hashem at the same time, and one of them actually contains part of what it says in the Torah in it, right? So it's almost like an explanation a little bit of the Torah, a further fleshing out, but it's saying use this idea in a court case to say, hey, is my testimony isn't just going to decide a future for this one person, but actually has ramifications much larger than that. We have one other comment about this word demei achicha. So the first one came from Rashi saying it's in the plural because it's saying not just the present blood, but the future blood. But Baruch Epstein, the Torah Tamima, who was born to another great rabbi who wrote a book called the Aruch HaShulchan, but is the son of that rabbi, Baruch Epstein, the Torah Tamima, writes the following. And so, by the way, he has a really interesting book that actually takes all the comments in the Torah that relate, all the comments in the Talmud that relate to the Torah, and tries to kind of show us how they link together. So, Baruch Epstein looks at this word called demei achicha, and he says, actually, I don't agree with Rashi here. I think bloods means something else. And what does he say? He says he says that this shows that actually Cain went ahead and stabbed Abel in many places because he had no idea which stab would be the stab that actually killed him, right? Cain has never experienced this kind of idea of hurting someone, and Cain wants to know, like, what will be the most hurtful of the ways that I hurt. So basically, when God is looking and saying, it's not just one blood trickling out. There are multiple kind of exit wounds of Cain, of Hevel, and so that's what was blood. So here's a question for you: if we want to kind of use these comments and ask the question, which of these comments do these comments make actually Cain more guilty or less guilty? So think about that for a second. Okay. Good. And then one other thing, if the story of Cain and Abel interests you at all, and it's certainly interested enough for us to have what I think would have been the liveliest discussions we've had in class so far, then I want to direct you to one of the greatest books ever written called East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And the entire book is about two brothers and their conflicts, and of course, and East of Eden, right? It kind of talks about where Chava and Adam are banished to, and where Cain settles as well. Okay, so and here is a quote by in that book, right? So read that quote and kind of tell me what the quote is about, and what does at least the character in the book believe that the story of Cain and Abel is really all about, and what would bring about peace in the world if we could kind of get rid of that one thing. Okay, great. So let's move on. So right after the killing, right, the murder, right, we have a actually, and let me just say right there, I just said the killing and the murder. Which was it, actually? Was it killing? Was it murder? Hey, answer that question for me, because I think that's also an interesting one. So here we have kind of what happens next in the story, and I've got a bunch of questions about this pasuk. I actually have 11 questions, but why don't you give me 3 questions that you come up with from looking at this part of the Torah, what comes next? Okay. So my first question to you is this: how is Cain's punishment different or connected to Adam's punishment? So kind of look at the way Adam is punished, look at the way Cain is punished. What's the connection there? Why are they connected? How are they connected? Great. So we get this idea that Cain is to become a wanderer. And the question is this a part of the punishment? Or is this the result of the punishment? Meaning, does Cain need to become a wanderer, dependent on others, because he can no longer get something from the ground? Or is that actually part of the punishment that is independent of kind of the earth and Cain's relationship with the earth? And by the way, and let me just ask this other question, is the relationship to the earth, is it in some way God saying, why is God choosing this as the punishment? Is it because of the gift that God did not respect? Or is it because of the blood that kind of seeps into the ground because of Hevel's death? What is God reacting to? How does it feel like this is a punishment that is meeting the crime in some way? Okay. So interestingly enough, right, we see that Adam and Eve and the Nachash have all received punishments before Cain has. But Cain is the first to react to this as being like, this is actually too hard for me. We actually see that Eve, we know as a fact, she's okay with the punishment, right? She actually has a child, right? After that punishment is given. The Nachash, he never responds, right? Adam never, everyone seems to be like, okay, we're going to kind of deal with the punishment. And Cain even deals with the punishment that Adam gets as far as, right? But Cain is the first to react to it. Why is that? Why is he feeling like this punishment is actually God, you've actually gone too far. I don't think I can actually do this. Okay. Next question. Why isn't why isn't the punishment actually the most suitable punishment, that if Cain is a killer, why isn't he actually killed for committing murder as well? Okay. Um, how is it, by the way, right? So this is really interesting, right? So it says, anyone who meets me may kill me. How is it that actually Cain knows what the meaning of this word kill is, right? He didn't seem to know that a few sentences ago. Next, how does God respond to Cain's cry? Is it a reduction of the punishment, or is it a change of the punishment? Right? Next question. Why is Cain the first to say the punishment will distance him from God? Right? This actually points again, like this points to some characteristic of Cain that we've underestimated. Number one, Cain from himself decides that there is a way to get close to God, and that is by offering a mincha. And here we see that very same guy who we have kind of labeled as like the quintessence of badness. He's actually talking about this fear of being distanced from God, right? Never was this mentioned before, right? Adam and Eve didn't think that punishment would equal distancing from God, and Cain believes that. Why is this? What is this all about? Help me understand that. And why doesn't God respond with actually, this won't distance you from me. There are ways that you can kind of be close to me, and it's not this way. Specifically because we know what was said before in this speech where God said, your primary job, Cain, is to look at your emotions and to figure out how to deal with them. Right? Maybe that is a way that you can actually show your closeness to me, but God doesn't go there. God actually doesn't even respond to this whole distancing piece at all, or does he? Right? Okay. So in historically, this mark of Cain has actually been thought of as a bad thing, right? And it's been used, I believe, in some horrible, horrible ways. But if we look at the text itself, what is that mark of Cain? What is it there to actually do for Cain? Is it a bad thing or a good thing, and why? Okay. Why is Eden mentioned here? East of Eden, and that's the name of this book where Cain actually dwells, that book by John Steinbeck a few minutes ago. Why is Eden, why doesn't it just say Cain settles in the east? Why is it that Cain in some way is not just settling somewhere, but his landmark where he is settling is close to this place called Eden? Why is that? What does Eden represent for Cain? And how is actually where he's going, in a sense, like, or what he's carrying, kind of a sense of like that what I am and who I am is in direct relationship to this place called Eden, not inside it, but outside it. Is he finding comfort by being there? Is he using that as a challenge to God? Like, what is this deal? It could, right? The Torah could have said it doesn't even have had to mention where he settled. It doesn't really matter to us, right? But actually, for some reason, it really does matter to the Torah where it is. Why is that? Okay, and then this other idea. How is the founding of the city? What does that have to actually do with all this, right? If we know that Cain, we know that there are things that Cain can no longer do, and we know that his punishment, or that as a result, he's wandering. The city is, in some way, does something to that wandering. Are we supposed to see the city as an answer? Are we supposed to see the city as a default? Are we supposed to see the city as what is that doing, and how are we supposed to be looking at cities? And of course, we know there's a story that's going to come after the story of Noah and the ark, and that of course is Migdal Bavel, the story of Bavel, and we see there a city that obviously God is so upset about. and is not going to tolerate. So are the kernels of that idea of God's relationship to cities in general, is that being actually established at this point? And if so, what's the bad part of it? Is it just that Cain is in some way connected to it, or is there something else about city, right? And naming it after his son. Okay, a few final pieces before we move on. And the first is a midrash from Midrash Tanchuma, which paints a really interesting picture. And of course, let's just go over how midrash happens, right? Something strange that needs to be explained in the Torah. And there's a concern also that our rabbis have about kind of an issue going on here. And in some way, they get linked up in this thing called something strange in the Torah and a concern. So we meet up with that, right? And it really kind of comes from this idea of when God asks, "Where is your brother?" Right? And Cain says back, "Am I my brother's keeper? Am I supposed to be the one responsible for him?" And so, what is it that Cain is really saying? I'm not the one who really should be responsible. Who should be responsible? Right? So what is Cain actually trying to do to God at that moment? And that's where this midrash comes in, right? When God asks Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" Cain replies, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? No, you, God, are the guardian. Why are you asking me?" And then what midrashim love to do is they love to bring kind of mushals or kind of parables that help us compare. It can be compared to a thief who steals during the night but's not caught while he's committing the crime. And when the guard comes to imprison him the next morning, he says, "Why did you steal those utensils?" And the thief replies, all right, so you keep on reading this and kind of help me understand how that parable is a great parable for helping us understand what should God be saying, and right, we have what should Cain be saying to God as like think again, God, I'm not my brother's keeper, you are. I did what any kind of person would do when their sacrifice is rejected. I did my job. What about you, right? What job were you supposed to do at this moment, right? And interestingly enough, now we see like this kernel of brash and brazenness that comes from our beginning characters of the Torah vis-a-vis how they relate to God, right? We saw Adam said, "The woman that you gave to me, she gave to me that fruit and I ate it." And I know that some of you answered that question, and I accepted, I gave you full credit for it, said that, what Adam is actually blaming the woman. But if we do a closer reading, it's not just the woman, it's the woman asher natata imadi, the woman that you gave to me, the woman that you, God, gave to me. I would have never stumbled if you hadn't given me someone, if you hadn't, provided me. I didn't need someone. I was just fine. You're the one who said I was lonely, right? You're the one who kind of helped me realize I was lonely, but I was okay alone. That actually addition to my being, that's what caused me to do wrong. So who in the end is guilty, right? And in a sense, Cain may be asking the same question, saying, I acted to the emotions that are in me. That's the job of a human being, to say, I have emotions and I act and react to them. You, God, are supposed to be the watcher to make sure that nothing happens to me. So who's really to blame? The last piece here actually is really interesting. It comes from a man named Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and I just want to bring him up here. So I want you to read this and then summarize for a moment what it is that Rabbi Sachs is talking about and how it is that he leads us from the story of Cain to the story of Noah. So read this, kind of tell me what is his central idea, and how does both Adam and Cain play their parts in this central idea of responsibility and denial of that responsibility. Okay, I gave it away a little. Okay. just to know, so Rabbi Sachs is a real gadol, is a real kind of he died a few years back, and I think it's important that we learn a little bit about him. So let's kind of just look at this video here.
Through his writings, sermons, and broadcasts, Rabbi Sachs touched the lives of countless people with his unfailing wisdom, with his profound sanity, and with a moral conviction, which, in a confused and confusing world, was all too rare.
On the 8th of March 1948, Jonathan Sachs was born in London to parents who instilled in him the values that would mark out the template of his life: concern for members of his community, aspiration for knowledge, love of culture, and fierce pride in being Jewish. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs sought to demonstrate how the best of Western thought could enhance our understanding of Judaism, and how Jewish values could help to repair the fractures in our society. For 22 years as Chief Rabbi of Great Britain and the Commonwealth, and in the years that followed, Rabbi Sachs's impact was felt far beyond the Jewish community. Advisor and friend to global leaders, he was a moral voice in the modern world, teaching the dignity of difference and the power that faith communities can achieve when they work together.
The nation is strong when it cares for the weak. That it becomes rich when it cares for the poor. It becomes invulnerable when it cares about the vulnerable. That is what makes great nations.
As a teacher of Torah, he was profoundly admired and deeply respected. Penning 40 books in his lifetime, publishing the first new translation and commentary of the Siddur in a generation, and creating a full suite of commentaries on the weekly Torah reading, he was as prolific as he was insightful.
I want to say to Jews around the world, take it, cherish it, learn to understand and to love it. Carry it, and it will carry you. And may you, in turn, pass it on to future generations. For you are a member of an eternal people, a letter in their scroll. Let their eternity live on in you.
A leader of leaders, his personality, sense of humor, and an extraordinary gift of public speaking came together in complete harmony. He was regarded at the highest level on whichever stage he stood, and left behind words and teachings that will be his everlasting legacy.
We need to restate the moral and spiritual dimensions in the language of the 21st century to inspire, to give hope, and to unite.
After his passing, the Rabbi Sachs Legacy Trust was established to promote the timeless and universal wisdom of Rabbi Sachs as a teacher of Torah, a moral voice, and a leader of leaders.
It's hard to lead a nation of individuals, but this is the most challenging, empowering, inspiring leadership of all.
Further, between Kain's inappropriate intent, and again, that's from Rabbi Sachs. He basically says like this, that Kain was offering something to God because he knew God was more powerful than himself. Kain says, look, my mom got me as an acquisition, and now I'm the owner of the earth and a lot of stuff. And so I need to give some of my stuff to God because he's more powerful. And if I give him some stuff, then in exchange, he'll give me some of his power. So he's brokering a deal, okay? And God says, that's pagan, okay? That is how you deal when there's lots of gods and you need to get something from one, so you want to bribe him, pay him off. But I am the master of the universe. I created the whole thing and I didn't need to. But I did because I love you and I'm here for you and I want to have dialogue and connection. So I want you to walk in my ways, be like me, be a good person. I want you to overcome your Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination. If you do that, then you will be a ruler. The Ata Timshal Bo. Then you'll be a ruler if you learn how to rule yourself. But if you think you can just pay your way out of trouble and bribe powerful beings or even deities in order to get your way, that's a bad thing and it's not going to work. Whereas Hevel, let me explain now what Hevel's name means.
All right. So that was just a teaching. Since we just saw Rabbi Sachs, that was his teaching directly on the offering of Cain and why it was so bad. And before we end with our exploration of Cain and Abel, I want to bring you back. Some of you who were in my class last year got to read this very powerful poem by Dan Pagus about Katuv be'efron be'karon ha'chatum, written in pencil in a sealed railway car, and I want you to read this, and knowing now a little bit more deeply the story of Cain and Abel. I wonder if that changes at all your understanding, your reaction to this poem itself, right? So this is here in this carload, Kan b'mishloach hazeh, Ani Chava, I am Eve, Im Hevel b'ni, Im tiruet b'ni hagadol, Kain ben Adam, Tagidu lo she'ani. Here in this carload, I'm Eve with Abel my son. If you see my son Cain, son of man, tell him that I. All I'm asking from you is just some reaction to this poem, something that you learned from our discussions of Torah so far that you now can bring to this poem that you might not have been able to bring beforehand. A little bit more about this poem comes now. Let's see if we have it. Or maybe not. Okay. Before we end our video today, I want to talk about one larger issue that has started. We saw something that happened in this struggle between Cain and Hevel that we're going to see happening in many stories in the in Genesis, in the Torah itself. This idea of the younger brother getting kind of the older brother's place. So I want to give you a few different theories about this idea. And we have an article by Everett Fox called Stalking the Younger Brother, Some Models for Understanding a Bible Motif. Everett Fox, by the way, is the translator of the Torah, and and he tries to kind of be really sensitive to all of the light words, all of the Torah echoes in there. So he's a great translator. So let's look at this together. Right, the ubiquitousness in Genesis and everywhere of what Northrop Frye, that's a person, has called the theme of the passed over firstborn is obvious to anyone familiar with biblical text. The first divine act after the expulsion from Eden, and therefore the first divine human encounter in the Bible's real world, is God's preference for Abel's offering, which at least temporarily vaults the younger brother into superiority over the older. Thus commences the familiar pattern of divine favoritism of the younger brother. So Everett Fox is now going to give us a few different ideas or theories of why this is. And so it's a great little article, which I'm only going to give you small little tidbits of to help us kind of get this idea. Before, obviously, we get there, give me your own theory of why you think the younger brother is being kind of catapulted above the older brother, and why that is a reoccurring theme in the Torah. All right, so let's look at some of his themes as well, right? So he writes, the reader is compelled to ask why the motif has been repeated. So the first idea is the comparative view, that the younger brother motif appears a number of times in literature of the ancient Near East, right? So what he's saying here, he's saying that just look at other stories of the same time period. This idea of the younger being chosen or being preferred over the older is a common one. So when the Torah is being written, people understand those stories and they're looking at this and saying, oh, our stories are very similar to other stories. That's number one. Number two, we're going to call the psychological view, right? The central issue of younger brother is consequently one, and consequently one of great importance in Genesis, is group conflict and its resolution. In this perspective, the successful suppression of Esau and Joseph's feelings of revenge towards their brothers would serve as an educative model for their readers. This is a little harder to understand, right? So basically, Esau suppresses his own feelings of anger. Joseph suppresses his feelings of revenge, right? Joseph is the older child of Rachel, the oldest child of Rachel. And basically saying, hey, if you are a younger child, you can kind of make claims and make demands, and things are going to actually work out for you in the end. Because look how these two older brothers, who we think in some way were slighted, we think should hold on to a grudge, they actually don't hold on to a grudge. Okay. Number 3, historical model. It's a scholarly view of long-standing that, at least taken separately, the younger brother stories in Genesis reflect historical conflicts and changes between economic and political groups in Israel, right? Abel, the shepherd, evokes more sympathy than Cain, the farmer, perhaps because ancient Israel remembered its beginnings as pastoral and feared the agricultural life. So I think that's easier to understand. See if you can summarize that one for me. Okay, here's the social economic idea, right? The younger brother motif beckons a change in Israel's internal history, a switch from pre-monarchic situation in which the father could choose his successor at will to a more familiar monarchic where the rights of the firstborn reign supreme. So there is a tension between this old way and a new way, and the Torah kind of saying, hey, we actually like that old way of not just because you're born first, you get all of the rights and privileges. Okay, then we have this ideological view, right? All of these younger brother stories have something similar. There's a mystery as to why the younger child is chosen over the older one. The younger ones are never portrayed as better or kinder or more righteous, and most of the time their greatness only comes out later. But maybe the younger brothers share the characteristics of the Israelite people and their ups and downs as a whole. Given Israel's checkered history in the Bible of faithfulness and unfaithfulness, there must have been a strong sense of mystery and even anxiety about why God chose them and if God would continue to teach them. The tension inherent in such an idea is played out in a paradoxical manner. God chooses those who one might least expect. Okay? And I believe that's it. Okay, so that's it for our formative for today. See you in class.